We are the Deal family from TikTok. Now, if you watch our TikToks, you will know that our oldest daughter, Mackenzie, is deaf. And we have a 3-year-old named Sarah. But this is our very first YouTube video. So to catch you up until this point, we're going to start all the way back to our firstborn child was born. Megan's going to take it from here.
So Mackenzie was born hearing. She did fail her first hearing screening in the hospital, but then she passed the second one. So things did not really change until she turned 2 and we went to her checkup, and the doctor wanted her eyes checked and her ears checked. Her eyes were fine, and we went to the audiologist. This was when he was in the Army. So we were up there in Alaska, and he was off at some training. So my mom actually flew up there to Alaska to be with me for the test, but we honestly, right before we walked into the appointment, we were both laughing and joking, like we were like, there's nothing, not that hearing loss is a joke, but we just did not think that there was anything at all wrong with her ears. Because as much as she talked and all.
They expected an average doctor trip.
We did. And then we went in there and they were testing her. They tested her right ear. Her right ear was fine. They got to her left ear, and they said that there was definitely a good amount of hearing loss. So they put her in the booth. So there's 2 different steps to a hearing test.
Now, if you've never seen a child being tested for their hearing, it's not like anything like an adult where you hit a button or you tell them when you hear a sound. They put them in a booth, usually on your mom's lap or the audiologist's lap. And they play sounds up here in the booth and sounds over here, sounds in front of them, behind them, and all they look for is the child to do this, to this, or to turn around and make any kind of head movements towards the sound that's being played.
And then we also play little games like a puzzle. She'd hold it up.
If there's no reaction to any sound, it's highly likely that the child is having some hearing problems. So that's how they test it.
So after the hearing test in the booth and all at the audiologist office, they decided they needed to do another test, which is called an ABR, and that's where...
ABR is an auditory brain response. It's where they put her to sleep and they play sounds, and then they monitor your brain's activity or your brain's responses to the sound. So just in case the child was just not having it, like didn't care, they check your brain waves or your brain activity when a sound is played, so they can see
that's
if you're
how they confirms everything.
For sure hearing it or for sure not hearing it.
So her hearing stayed about the same in her right ear. Things were okay until age 3. And then she had a little bit of hearing loss, just enough for a hearing aid. So we got that. She lost a little bit more hearing when she was 4, and then things stayed the same until she woke up deaf, completely deaf at age 6. She put her hearing aids on. She didn't hear the little chime or anything. And she said the batteries were dead. So I went and changed the batteries and then held it up to my ears to hear the chime. I heard the chime. I give it back to her, and she said they still, the batteries still were not working. And so I was a little bit worried, but not super concerned, because just a few months before all this happened, something similar happened, and she had fluid on her ears. So they had to do some steroids and get the fluid off, and things were back to normal. But whenever we called the ENT this time, we went in, and there was no fluid on her ears, none at all. And I remember them checking, I think like 3 different ways or however they do that, and to confirm that there was no fluid at all on her ears. And that's when they referred us to Birmingham for us to go see her doctor up there, her audiologist.
UAB.
Yeah. And I remember going in there and talking to him. We asked all kinds of questions.
A million questions.
Yeah, how we could get it back, if it would come back. And
this is like we're still in panic mode. Like this can't be real. Not that we wouldn't accept her being deaf. It's just like, whoa.
It's really shocking though to find out that your child just woke up.
It's like, hold on, we don't know sign language. We don't have any kind of hard of hearing or deaf alarms or anything. We have no idea.
And we had never even met a deaf. Well,
Not a
I
clue
met one deaf person
about
in my whole
anything involved or
life.
has anything to do with the deaf community. So we're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
I mean, you could put yourself in that situation or try to.
It was really shocking, but I guess when it really sank in for me whenever we had the appointment with the ENT, and I remember he was walking out of the room. We were done with the appointment. He was walking out, and I asked him. I called him back. He turned around, and I said, "Is there any chance that her hearing will come back? Do you just honestly tell me?" And he looked at me and said, "Her hearing is gone. She's deaf. It's not coming back." And then he walked out. And that's when I guess it really hit me that she was deaf. Not that there's anything wrong with being deaf, but you know, like he said, it's really shocking to just wake up and your child not be able to hear. You know, most kids lose it for, you know, sickness.
Yeah. It took us a little while to realize we had to overcome and adapt. Well, not so much us, but her, because she was. If you knew Mackenzie back then, she loved to dance. She loved to listen to music even more. She was very loud, vibrant, but loved everything to do with sound and music and singing and everything. And now all of a sudden that's gone. And in our minds, there's no possible way she could ever hear again. Which when it come up from the surgery, actually, it was not our idea. We were scared to death of the idea of surgery.
We actually turned it down.
We said, no, we can't do that. We're going to learn sound. We're going to do all these things we need
that.
to do. But she asked, pretty much begged for months. And finally, we did all the research we could possibly do, because like we said, we know nobody who had any idea with this stuff except for the professionals we talked to.
And of course, they were on board with it, but we were just so unsure because that surgery is so close to her brain, and just, you know, there's always risk with surgery. But Mackenzie's main thing was the music, and her favorite song right before she lost her hearing was "Trust in You" by Lauren Daigle.
Now, real quick, I like to stress when I talk about this that I realize there's kids all over the world who deal with much, much worse and serious situations than this. But in our world, this was our panic mode. And I know there's kids that deal with worse,
but in our minds at the time.
Yeah. So not to downgrade
No.
any other situation, because kids deal with cancer, kids deal with all kind of terrible, terrible situations. But in our world, this was our terrible situation.
Right. So I remember we used to turn the music up really loud in the car, and then on the sound bar at home for her to listen, or, you know, listen. She would put her hand on the speaker in the car, or she would put her hand on the speaker at the house, things like that, and that's how she would listen to her song on repeat.
Now, she was completely deaf without any sort of hearing device for probably 8 or 9 months. So from the time that she went completely deaf, from the time that she was well established with her processor, her cochlear implant, her speech was declining. It wasn't, her ability to speak was not gone, but you could tell that she was losing it, because she was completely 100% deaf for at least 7 months. So after we did all of our research to the utmost extent, we went with cochlear. She has a Nucleus 7, and after it's a ton of stuff you have to do between from the surgery to the final mapping is what they call it. But that's a huge process in itself. I remember a big moment that sticks out in my head after one of her first mappings, after her processor was activated. We were at the hotel room, and Sarah Grace was just a few months old, probably 3 or 4. And it was getting close to her time to eat, and she got a little fussy and started crying. And I was sitting there, I was talking to Mackenzie about whatever, and she was distracted by a sound, and she asked me, "What was that?" And I said, "Well, I heard your sister crying." And then she would watch her lips. She would watch her face, you know, baby screaming, face is getting red. She's like, "That's Sissy crying. That's her crying." Up to this point, she had never heard her cry before. That's the sound of Sarah Grace crying. That's Sissy crying. I said, yeah, that's her crying. And in the appointment, she would clap her hands and listen. She'd hit the table and listen, and she would make she would hit stuff together because she just gotten her hearing back. She doesn't forget.
And she kind of had to learn sounds too, like we got a dog.
Oh gosh, she
right
had to relearn
after,
everything.
Right after she lost her hearing, I guess. Well, she lost
Things
it
you
in
hear every day.
July. We got Charlie, right? Yeah. So she had never heard him bark before. She's heard dogs bark before that, of course, but she, I guess,
relearn. It's a totally different sound.
She had to relearn it.
She told me I sounded like a duck. My voice sounded like a duck.
Yeah.
Not like I'm sitting there quacking, but like the tone and the pitch was like a duck. And I'm talking about like doorbell, dogs barking, cats meow, phone ringing, a car horn, a truck going down the highway, everything. People talking. She had to relearn voices. Yeah. She hears in a totally different way. Yeah. Totally different way.
But she's so young, so her brain just like...
She doesn't remember now. At this point, she has no idea what...
That was... Her remembering those things were like right after...
It was fresh memory. And at this point, it doesn't remember anything. And so to backtrack just a little bit, we started what's called genetic testing back when she was about 2 years old. This is just to find out maybe what condition she has or what's causing her to go deaf.
Their main issue, or not main concern, I should say, they were worried, some cases, if you're going deaf, you can also go blind. And so they kind of wanted to rule those situations out too. Yeah.
But we finally found out when she was how old?
7.
So 5 years of testing. And they come up with a condition that not enough people have to even give it a legit name. So it's called DFNB91. It's just a code. Yeah. Because it's not even common enough to
have it. And she's
anything.
the youngest person that they know of to go deaf from this condition, I guess you'd call it. The youngest person that they know of, I think, went deaf at like 17 or 18. So, but that test, we got the testing done, and it took like 5 or 6 months to even get those results back.
So up to this point, Mackenzie has had her cochlear implant for 3 years, right? 3 years. Now we've been on TikTok for about a year. And so many people have suggested us get a YouTube channel. We put it off for so long, but we finally did it. Our first YouTube video. And that's it. Yep. We'll have more to come. But if you want to know some more stuff, maybe leave us some suggestions in the comments. Yes. Like all the other ones say, give this video a thumbs up. And that's it. Y'all be good.